It's been 500 days since the war in Sudan broke out, and the escalating conflict has sparked a humanitarian and economic crisis, leaving millions displaced, hungry and facing the collapse of vital infrastructure. As the country struggles to cope, the economic impact reverberates throughout the region. Since the power struggle between the Sudan Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces began in April 2023, over 25 million people are in need of humanitarian aid. The conflict has displaced 12 million people, creating the world's largest internal displacement crisis. Sudan's healthcare and infrastructure systems are collapsing under the pressure. Rampant inflation and conflict have caused nearly half of Sudan's population to be unemployed, while the Sudanese pound has lost 50% of its value. Factories, banks and markets have been looted, and more than 30 million people are without internet and phone access due to blackouts. Sudan faces extreme food insecurity, with 18 million people, that's 37% of the population, experiencing severe hunger. Rising fuel prices and disruptions in agricultural production have driven the country towards a hunger crisis, affecting labour and supply chains. Over 2 million people have fled Sudan, including 600,000 to Chad in the past year. The refugee crisis is intensifying, with potential risks of conflict spilling over into the region, further destabilising neighbouring countries. Joining me now from Lagos is Mukhtar Mohammed, an international finance and economic analyst. Great to have you on the programme, Mukhtar. Now, the war in Sudan is in its 500th day today. The country's economic and humanitarian situation has worsened. Can you explain to our audience how it's devastating the country and the region's economies?
Thank you and good morning. Its effect on the economy of the region is it cannot be quantified. And then again, when you look at the countries that are affected by this conflict, it's almost 5 to 6 countries. Now, the effect on the Sudanese economy, like you said in your introduction, about 50% of their currency devaluation has happened. High inflation, unemployment is an all-time high. Factories and most especially schools are shut down. You have over 10,000 schools shut down in the conflict affected areas. So definitely there's no education. A lot of children are out of school. This also is part of what some of the warring factions are using as rebel, even using children as fighters. So the effect is very, very, very large. And I think for the country that is most affected is the Southern Sudan, which is a neighbor of Sudan itself. So it's northern sea is responsible. Its northern port is responsible for the export of over 2/3 of Southern Sudan crude oil, which in turn bringing petrodollar to that economy of Southern Sudan. That has been largely impacted because of the conflict, and so they are also beginning to feel the heat, because again they're discussing hunger also in Southern Sudan because they are not able to earn revenue because of the crisis. So it has a devastating effect. And again, if you look at country like Chad, country like Libya also are being affected. And then the insecurity also is going towards the Sahara side of Africa, as far as Lake Chad, and even sometimes as far as Nigeria when it comes to the conflict that is happening in Sudan.
Right, and recently there has been flooding and a burst dam that we mentioned earlier. How has the destruction of infrastructure and key services deepened Sudan's crisis?
Well, infrastructure is a key driver of any economy, and when you don't have infrastructure, then your economy is at a standstill. If you look at Sudan economy, the infrastructures are not there, power is not there, communication is not there, especially in the area of internet, and the world has become a global village. Money transfer services are down, so there's no road, like the dam, like you just talked about the dam that was burst, and so it has hindered a lot of activities. And you mustn't forget that also Southern Sudan is largely an agricultural economy. So once you have this flooding, it affects the economy of those regions, especially those parts. And if you look at the part that the flooding happened, at the part that is normally responsible for a lot of economic activity, and this will lead to food shortage, and in turn cause a lot of hunger in the land. And again, like I said, this food shortage does not just remain in Sudan. Also, alone, it goes to other parts of Africa.
Okay, Mokhtar Mohammed, International Finance and Economic Analyst there in Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.